I think that's part of it, right? So this is my big concern going into Wednesday. Okay. We had Collision last night, which I watched, which I enjoyed. But a lot of the show was taken up with talking about Jon Moxley's victory at Windy City Riot over Tetsuya Naito, or as Tony Schiavone called him, Naito. Which it was very cute. Naito. I was like,
Naito.
Naito.
Nice.
And I think, putting that aside, because I think we'll talk about that show and, the overall direction with New Japan in a minute, we're now saying, we already are having issues with centering this title feud in this pay-per-view build because we're spending a lot more time and video package energy on Ospreay versus Danielson than we are on Swerve versus Samoa Joe. The program itself doesn't feel as hot, although, depending on who you're talking to, I think some folks are struggling with Ospreay versus Danielson as well. Others are super excited for it. Everybody has their preferences. But you're now on Wednesday going to take Jon Moxley, who's one of your biggest stars and one of your biggest ratings movers, and you're going to put him on TV with another belt, and you're going to run the risk of telling your audience that the IWGP World Championship is more important than your AEW World Championship, or you're going to present it in such a way where it comes across as more important. That's like a big concern for me right now. I don't know that that's something they should be doing, as much as I think they do need to have Mox back on TV, and as happy I am for Mox that he won the championship.
I think they got the balance wrong in this cycle, and I think it's difficult because it's evident that he doesn't see Joe in the same way as he even saw Paige, which feels like a crazy thing to say, doesn't it? But in terms of ratings, so there has been less focus, and Joe gives Swerve less room to maneuver. So, but the key is, so the thing with Swerve is, and he has become a little bit of our talisman, I think, about this, is when you look at WWE and their successes, it's that they are able to elevate upwards. And people buy in that they can, even if they don't. This is Sami Zayn, right? He gets elevated all the way up, he comes back down to his normal level, but people accept that because they saw him go all the way up. What happens in AEW is you have your place, and you can beat top guys, but you still have your place.
Right.
Eddie Kingston, I always bring up that example. You can beat top guys, but actually you weren't treated as a big thing when you lost the belt. You were still the guy that you were. And people struggle to get out of that structure. So now we've got new people coming in, and you'll get someone like Ospreay or Okada come in, and they are treated as the top level star and positioned like that.
Right.
And you can have a Brian Keefe come in, and he will be treated as he's a jobber, and that's his level. And we don't see people escape their levels very often.
No.
When was the last time? Maybe they claimed? I was trying to think about this, but is that the last time somebody moved levels?
Yeah. I would probably say the Acclaimed. I think you could argue MJF, but I think MJF was always
he was always set up for that top level.
Yeah.
He was always presented at top level.
I would probably say the Acclaimed. I think you could argue, at least most recently, yes.
Yeah, and that's a long time ago. So people struggle to escape the kind of ceilings they're put on. Swerve is the first guy, probably since the Acclaimed, that is nearly able to do that.
Yes.
So you need to, you have to tell fans that they can trust you, that when they get behind somebody, you're going to get behind them.
Yep.
Whether you believe in it or not.
Right.
You can't lose that. That's such an important thing in wrestling, that people believe, I'm really into this guy, therefore I'm going to be rewarded for my investment. So you have to focus on this guy. And you haven't done it so much in the build. You've had new debuts coming in, you've had this and that. Whatever, that's done. Okay, so you need to make, he needs to cut a babyface promo on Wednesday night. And you need to make that moment, I believe it'll be a dynasty. I've always believed it's going to be a dynasty now, ever since they came straight to it after the pay-per-view.
Yes.
You've put yourself in a position now where there's no way out of it. They went straight back to it after a week. I wasn't a big fan of that. When somebody turns babyface, they need a setback and they need a bit of a longer chase.
Yes.
Or you can do the Austin 98 thing where they can win the belt, but then they lose it quickly.
Right.
We are now in a situation where you can't do either of these things with Swerve. Okay? So you can't do that next kind of pushback because you went straight to that match and it's a one-on-one. You can't get out of it in that way. The best option would have been to find a way to get the belt on Paige and then have him chase Paige down the wall. And we haven't got that. That's always been my thing. That's always what I thought they should do. You now have a point where I believe he'll win at Dynasty. you then have to focus on him. You need to have the right people with him. He needs to face an experienced heel.
Yep.
Which is why we was going about Christian Cage. That is the only guy I can think of on the roster that fits that thing currently. And then you need to do that Hangman program. You need to do that program. Because that's where he gained the most momentum, and Page is such an easy guy for him to play off. The key thing is that, you can't overshadow him. So if you're going to have all these other belts and you're going to put all these people somewhere, then you need to be really careful of that. There's this undercurrent of you have Danielson versus Ospreay, where Ospreay beats Danielson. And I believe from the promos that that video they showed on Dynamite,
it certainly seems like it now.
Yeah, it made the story Danielson going, on a losing streak and losing belief in himself seems to be that story. So that feels to me like, okay, so Ospreay would be surely like very high in the rankings. So how do you get out of that one? That's a key question.
Yep.
And then that brings us to kind of the Wembley thing is you have to keep him hot as a babyface. You need to give him focus. You need to not make the mistakes that you made with Adam Page. He's not coming in as hot as Page or MJF did. So he's going to need more focus than these guys did. But also, the idea, and I know why people are so into the Ospreay at Wembley thing. I get it. It makes sense in terms of you don't think about it too much. I don't think there's anything in the current numbers that says you need to speedrun this guy.
No, I don't either.
And I think there is this tendency of Tony to want to jump to that next generation and his chosen guys to kind of get over the things that, funny enough, this kind of release of this footage pulls him back into. Like he can just move on to new people, but I don't think it works like that. It doesn't work like that. We've seen that in the ratings, when we lose people. So, but you have to concentrate on this guy. And if you were going to do that at Wembley, so you're going to tell me that you're going to have your first ever black male heavyweight champion. And then 3 months later, you're going to have this guy booed in the biggest stadium show they do each year?
Yeah.
Is that what you're aiming for? Is that what you're aiming for? Do you understand how that looks? I'm sorry, right? I know people don't want to talk about this stuff, but do you understand how that looks? And then if you were going to take the belt off him and he'd have on the shorter title reigns, like, you got to be really careful. You have to make this guy work. And he's talented enough to do it. And he has the crossover connections and that sort of thing. You have to make him work. I don't care what you wanted to do. This is where Tony struggles sometimes, is he has a destination. And this pay-per-view has felt like that as well. He has a destination, and he doesn't want to adapt from it.
No.
So sometimes he'll give you like the Thunder Rosa run. He'll give somebody a run, but you can tell when he doesn't believe in it. The same way when he didn't believe in the Adam Page run because he was already on to wanting Punk and Max. Yeah. So you can tell when and the audience can now as well. They're used to that structure. So you have to make this work, not just for Swerve, and because you can make this guy, and he's more than talented enough to be in that position, but for that audience to show that you can reward that investment in somebody.
Well, it's the frustrating part right now of a lot of the Swerve dialogue. Swerve's not ready, Swerve's not the guy. And I'm like, how much of the way that the promotion is presenting him is factoring into how you feel about that, right? And that's, in no way do I want to negate anyone's feelings. People are allowed to feel however they want to feel. But I do think there are times where we have to take a deep breath and say, do I not think he's the guy, or is the promotion telling me that he is not? Because they are centering someone else.
It's the same thing they're doing in WWE now. Look at on Raw, look at how Damian Priest was treated compared to Cody Rhodes.
Right.
They told you Priest is not a long-term investment. He's not a centerpiece guy. We give 45 minutes at the start of the show to Cody Rhodes. We did and that's what you should do with a champion. Let's be clear. That's it. But when you have another guy come out halfway through the show and he's kind of in the background and they call him transitional and it's very clear that he is, he's not the guy. People can spot this stuff a mile off. They don't need you to tell them, but visually and the way you position somebody, you're also telling them. And people are used to the pattern with that. It's just one of them things, but you've got to get it right. And I hope they do. And there's other things. They've got to get. Have we got an Owen coming up soon? That's due this time of year, isn't it? That's another tournament they have to get right this year. Last year was disappointing. The first one was.
We're 0 for 2 on Owen tournaments. Let's be honest.
But. So, there has to be forward planning, and I believe there is, but you've got to execute it, and you've got, it's tough. There's a lot to balance. You've got to balance all these returns in, but you need them for your rating, and, the TV deal is the main priority this year.
It is very hard. I do want to say that. Like, it's super easy for us to sit here and criticize it, but actually freaking pulling it off is very difficult.
There's a lot of things. There's a lot of things to balance. I
really don't envy them on this.
Yeah, but to me, like, the first priority is you make Swerve.
Yeah.
You prove that you can do that. in a way that you didn't at the time with Paige, and haven't really done with anyone else in terms of elevating them out their level since the Acclaimed. Like, prove it. So